Bedrijven kunnen meer met de wereld dan kinderen.
Die kunnen ideeën echt uitvoeren, die hebben invloed erop.
En daarom is het belangrijk dat ze nu met bedrijven en andere mensen ervoor zorgen dat het beter gaat met de aarde.
Good morning. Wonderful to be here, Mr. Mayor. Wonderful to be in Noordwijk and to be here at this buzzing international conference. Now, do you remember when you were 10 years old and you were in the classroom and your teacher was asking you who did their homework? And you remember this feeling that you kind of looked around, what do others say? I don't think that from the age of 10 until now, much has changed. I think that way too often, we still look around to the left or to the right about what other people think, what other people do. But isn't your business about doing what you think is the right thing? When you ask children why adults have such a hard time solving problems, and let's face it, I'm an eternal optimist, but let's look at the world today. We've all contributed. That's not children who contributed to that, it's adults. So clearly we have not been able to solve our issues. They say three things generally. They say adults always skip the first step. The second one is the steps of adults are always too big. And the third one that they always mention is adults always forget why they do things. Now, in your work, if you forget to say, why were we doing things, you may be going off to a small solution that actually doesn't get to the bottom of the issue. So that, for me, is the power of children. And over nearly 40 companies now have a kids council, and I bet you heard it. We believe that this should be for all companies. I'll come back to that later. So based on the very rich outcome of the various, you can imagine every kids council is the same. It's sort of at the level of a non-executive board. I'd like to share two lessons learned with you. One is dialogue versus debate, and the other one is how to really affect behavioral change. And the wonderful thing is, adults, they always say, behavioral change is so difficult. And children, they say, just do it. I had a conversation with children about leadership, because for me, this is about leadership. And plowing through all the various thoughts, they said, in the end, leadership, there's a lot of verbs in the sentence, so hold on, but all the verbs have a reason. They said leadership is letting go of thinking that you always have to be the best. All these verbs, they come from a dialogue with children. Leadership is learning to let go, to think you always have to be the best. The moment that in a relationship of dialogue, you let go and say, I just have one perspective, pure magic happens. And you give so much space. For me, that is really leadership. It's not about you, it's not about all you know, but it's the knowledge and the space that you give to others. And what your role is, and that is purely my role, is to ask questions. Leaders, and you have a job in getting them to help them to deal with it. Leaders are not equipped to deal with unexpectedness. We've given a little A4 briefing. To be honest, there's nothing on it. It gives them a full sense of security. They realize it. They don't know quite what to happen. And their project leaders ask them, go with the flow. Then they go into a dialogue session, and they're being told that the other lesson, the other rule is, you cannot send information. The kids have looked at all the information. You can only ask questions and listen. And then I close my dialogue versus debate. They all come out and said, I cannot remember the last time I listened for an hour. What does it tell you? The next time you sit with them, are they really listening? Or are they already processing half of the information and putting it into their own frame of thinking? Which means that probably half of your advice goes to pieces. In other words, if you give dialogue a place, it might help you later on. You have to have the courage to simplify. You have to have the courage to say, for example, it's not to let go of all your baggage wording. I remember this discussion we had with the children, and they said, okay, so we talk about 5 minutes showering. And then they said, well, the adults, they said, with whom we created this, with Unilever, with World Wildlife Fund, and so on, and they said, well, we have to talk about warm water, because it's warm water, energy saving, link, water, energy. And the kids, they said, why? I'm not taking a cold shower. It's just about showering. So it's learning to let go of thinking that you have to put all the baggage in it for people to understand. And it turns out that all of the way that we're designing this, that the children have designed this, is underpinned by every piece of research that I have seen about good and effective behavioral change. You make it simple, you make it understood, you make it rewarding, you make it easy to maintain it, and you keep on doing it. This we can learn from children. The courage to simplify, to use words that mean something, that are not empty concepts, and ultimately, if you stick with it, it's a long-term commitment. Change, as you know in your companies that you work with, does not happen overnight. So you have to stick with it. I close off with my dream. And my dream is, indeed, that every company wants to have a kids' council. I tell you that the value that you give to actually making this notion of future-proof, future, we all have that word in us, but the moment you bring the future into your company and you look them in the eyes, that's when you really become future-proof. So if any of you feels excited about this, this is my stage, I can do my hard selling job, please, Kids Council would be a wonderful solution to many of the companies. There is a website where, as I said, all the companies that have one are mentioned. For me, the Kids Council, before I hand the floor to one more quote of a girl that we've been working with, Rayan, who's 11, who unfortunately has to go back to Libya. But you will see, and we hope that she will shine, and she's the type of girl who will ultimately be in a leadership position. I bet that you feel the same way. But for me, the Kids Council is ultimately a symbol of how honest a company is, how transparent a company is, and its willingness and openness for change and for bringing in other perspectives. The notion of a stakeholder dialogue and bringing in perspectives remains within the comfort zone of companies if it is fairly predictable, with predictable language. Children are by definition unpredictable because they still have the power of system thinking, and what they come up with, you don't know. But you can know one thing, as the girl said in the video, children have the power of positive thinking. Thank you very much. Rayan.
The Kids Council is the children admitting that the sky is the limit. They say that, okay, we have bigger ideas. We can change something even though we're young.